Yeah, so I'm back here at Fan Expo, Vancouver, and I have the privilege of speaking to a game developer from SFU.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So first of all, introduce yourself. What's your name? And thank you for accepting this interview.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. My name is Erica. I'm an alumni of SIAT, which is the program that I'm demoing in front of. And I made an indie game with some of my friends called Grooveyard.
First of all, introduce what SIAT is.
SIAT is the School of Interactive Arts and Technology. It has 7 different concentrations now. There was only 3 when I went, but it goes from everything from like AI. We have interactive systems, just design as a whole. So UX UI design, apps, web development, to animation, stuff like that. So it's a broad program of a lot of different media. I'm actually demoing in front of our VTuber program, which is something you can do here because we have mocap as well.
Yeah, so I've heard. But today we're here to talk about your game.
Yes.
And this is the game that you made called Grooveyard.
Yeah.
I mean, first impression for me as a longtime journalist in the field and someone who's played a bunch of games, especially indie games.
Oh, yeah.
I used to test a lot of indie games like for reviews. This gives me like just the aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's a bit like Undertale.
That's what we hear. We also hear a little bit of Celeste.
And of course,
there was inspiration there.
I didn't see any gameplay, so I can't tell yet. But in terms, like, because Celeste is like a Metroidvania.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's more. So tell us what Grooveyard is first of all.
Yeah, so Grooveyard's a puzzle game where you're this character here, a skull, and essentially you're looking for your body. Along the way, you're trying to revive these little skeleton creatures, and to do that, you just solve puzzles. There's 6 worlds in total, and they progressively get harder with different gimmicks. But yeah, it's just a classic puzzler.
So it seems like a pretty simple concept for.
Yeah, you don't want to make a game too complicated because then...
No, of course not. Oftentimes I find that simple works best.
Oh yeah, 100%. Especially with indie games, you don't want to make the scope too large. It gets a little too complicated to make. We were in development for 5 years. So.
Oh wow! I mean, for an indie game, I think that you're bordering development hell.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, do you want to check out gameplay or?
I mean, it's not gonna like really be part of the interview. So I mean, it's not like I'm more here to ask you about like how you went about to make the game.
Oh sure.
Like how did you first of all, where did you get the idea for like to make this game?
Oh yeah, so there was a game jam online, GMTK game jam, and then a group of friends got together and they submitted what was essentially like a prototype of Grooveyard. It won 10th place overall, which is pretty good for one of the biggest game jams like in the world. Yeah, and so they decided to develop it into a full game, and then I joined the project about there. Yeah, where I was the artist, so then I just helped create these assets, lots of pixel art. Yeah.
So you're both the developer and the artist, the main artist for the game.
I'm one of the main artists for the game. Yeah.
How was it in terms of working on the development of this game? Because you said it's been 5 years that this between the beginning, like the conceptualization of the game,
right,
until the eventual release. So tell us, like, how did those years go? Like, what was the development process?
There was a lot of, so we met weekly and then just set goals. Initially, obviously, there was already a game concept, so I personally, because I joined the project a little bit later, didn't have to do anything for the game conceptually there. I was just told kind of weekly goals to meet, and then I'd submit art, and then it'd be put into the game. Yeah.
And when did you feel that like this was gonna be a much longer term project than you initially thought, maybe?
Everyone has full-time commitments, and they were doing this.
Oh, you're entirely part-time team.
Yeah, we are. You
don't have a single.
No, there was nobody full-time developing, and that's why it took 5 years. Because in like concept, this is a fairly simple game if you look through it. So it's just everyone doing it like zero budget, just out of their own time commitment.
Okay, zero budget. So tell us how you went about procuring yourself the resources to develop the game, because even if you have no budget, you still need to
you still need to
finance the game somehow. I'm sure that you can, if you're on a campus, like in myself, since I work for the campus radio station, I don't have any problem using the studio or any of the offices because I work for the radio station and I'm a student on campus. If I was no longer a student, I would have to pay.
Right.
So, how did you go about? Did you use like school resources? How did you go about developing the game? Where did you find the resources?
There weren't school resources. I think everyone in the team pitched in, but I could imagine at our school, if you were interested in a project such as this, there's some funding to go around, maybe clubs you can join that have interest. I know there's a game development club at our school, SFU, that maybe could help you like find resources, but as an indie game, you could also try to find publishers, and then that could help fund your game. I know it's a hard process to go about, but if you make a press kit and you show it to a lot of publishers, they might pick it up. Now that's another thing that.
So is this game self-published?
It is.
Yeah, I mean, because you were
from start to end, it's indie. Yeah.
Actually, maybe I can ask you that question. It's a bit of a broader question than specifically about your game, but for you, what are the criteria? I ask this to developers, and nobody can give me a clear answer. What are your criteria for what an indie game is? Because earlier, when we were discussing, I mentioned blueprints. Because when you mentioned puzzle game, it's sort of the reference now, blueprints, as far as indie puzzle games go.
Yeah.
But Clear Obscure is also considered an indie game,
right?
And it won the Game Award for best indie game,
right.
So, what are your criteria for indie games?
Me personally, I think so long as you have started with a team that's not part of an already established like corporation of games, and you're starting like basically ground up with a team, it's usually an indie game. I would say it gets a little bit touchy when people have worked in big companies and they make their own indie team, but they kind of use those brand names to kind of push themselves forward. I know there's scandals in that area. So say, for example, you work at a huge company, you exit with a bunch of people, you already have a team of very established, like AAA people. Then I personally don't know if I'd call it indie, especially if you leverage those titles. But I would say our game's pure indie in the fact that we had to reach out to random Reddit subs, try to get any kind of traction, do our own like TikTok guerrilla marketing, stuff like that.
That's interesting. You mentioned game devs taking a team with them, former staff from a company. Guillaume Broche, the lead dev of Clear Obscure, he did that with Ubisoft, but he also found a lot of talent. For example, he didn't have a writer or someone to make the soundtrack. Mm-hmm. He found his musician on SoundCloud, and he was a guitar teacher, and he found his writer on Reddit. Speaking of which,
exactly.
So I mean, it's a lot of mixed emotions. I feel for a lot of developers when a game like Clear Obscure gets called indie because they did have a big budget, but they had to find their own publisher with Kepler and. Of course, having those titles and that experience helps you. But then my question is that, well, isn't it a little bit kind of shaming someone for having a good portfolio in the end?
I don't know if it's shaming someone from having a good portfolio. I just think if your main marketing is that you're indie, it gets a little bit touchy for a lot of indie creators. And I personally am okay with whatever. I think there's space for everyone. But I do know, I've been around. I was one of the main marketers for a game. So I know if you got a big publisher and, you have lots of things going for you, you might not want to market yourself as indie forward because it takes away opportunities from small creators. But that's my personal take on it. Yeah. And that's where I think a lot of drama comes from.
Speaking of marketing, once this game was released, how did you feel about the numbers and the response and the feedback?
I think we did the best for what we could. We tried to garner a lot of attention doing like a countdown on all the socials, TikTok, Instagram. We made reels because that's what you have to do, posting on Reddit like all the time. I wouldn't say our game was up there. We released at the same time as Is This Seat Taken, which was another puzzle game that's pretty popular. And so even, it's hard to get up there, especially as a puzzle game. We realized doing market research after we wanted to make this game that it's kind of hard to put yourself out there as a puzzle game. There's so many of them that don't get noticed. And then, but the numbers were okay. There's a company out there called Thinky Games that helped make videos about our content. Shout out Joe. But yeah, it's not bad. We've sold enough to, make ourselves proud. And that's at the end of the day, that's what it's about.
When you say make yourself proud, is it like you broke even on?
Oh yeah, for sure. We've
Yeah.
definitely made up a lot of games. I think it's like 90% of games on Steam don't make up, don't get back the
Development costs.
Yeah, well, not dev costs, just even you have to pay to publish on Steam.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
People don't even get that back, like the $100 or whatever it is for that. And we've definitely made that back. So at the end of the day, as long as we've technically made money, it's good for us.
So what's the future for you? Are you going to keep working in the gaming industry in one way or another and keep developing and making art for games?
Yeah, so Guavagoose Games, which is the indie people I work with, we're making new content. And I'm working on that. I'm also helping with other indie game creations and just, yeah, making art, working on stuff like that.
And today you're here in this booth. I was a little bit confused earlier with the SFU Anime Club, which is a totally separate organization, even though you're part of the same university.
Yeah.
So you are with the studio.
Yeah, I'm an alumni. So
yeah, you're an alumni.
Yeah,
yes, of course.
So I went to SFU. I was in the SIAT program, and I graduated fairly recently. And so I'm just here to show off the really cool things that you can do after grad, because it's such a varied program that I think it kind of gets lost in what the messaging of our program is.
Yeah, maybe explain that actually, because a lot of people, I think back home, will be interested to know that there is such a program here at SFU. Eventually, I'll talk about with other members of your studio and the club about the university VTubers and all those things going on. But as far as the SIAT goes, what was your experience in the program? Like, what kind of classes did you do? What kind of projects, and what were the exams like? Maybe give a little bit of a summary.
I would say SIAT program offers you this very, especially in the first 2 years, you get this very holistic view of what, I guess, jobs in tech can look like. So as I mentioned, one of our biggest avenues and a lot of students go to is UX UI. So like web development, app development, a lot of just like front facing positions, because design's like one of our main things that we teach. And so you get a lot of that. And then after you have like experience in these different varied things in first year, you get to kind of go towards a concentration. And then we have lots of co-op opportunities that, our program coordinator could tell you a lot about. And then once you kind of get your foot into a company, you kind of end up with a job there.
So what were your, I heard from the others that apparently the job prospects are pretty good out of the program. What did you land out of university?
Well, I personally wanted to do game development, which it's not as big in our program, I will say. So I personally went the indie route, which is, I kind of like went my own way. So I didn't land like the big tech jobs, but there are a lot of students who go to places like Sony or EA or, there's a lot of big tech companies around here.
Yeah, I heard a lot of big names.
Yeah.
But it's more a question of how many and dubs there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I would say it's a pretty good number, but I don't personally know the numbers. I'm not,
Yeah, no, I'll talk to your program coordinator about that.
Yeah.
I more want to know about your personal experience in the program.
Right.
How did it go for you?
I think I got a good foot in. I personally don't know. Again, one of the biggest, especially back in my day, they did revamp the program recently. So I would say it's actually more interesting. Like the VTuber program wasn't big when I was there. That just started up when I was leaving. So I feel like they're kind of expanding things, but I personally wasn't too big on the UX UI side. So with my program, I would say I kind of graduated and then took what I learned to kind of go about it differently. Like I know some people will get like supplementary, like they learn at SIAT that they like to do something.
Got it.
And then you can kind of take that and do learning on your own. I know of another alumni who basically graduated from the program and then took 1 year off to kind of like learn more 3D on their own, because obviously you can, if you have a really good portfolio, get a job straight out of university. But
makes sense.
I will say, again, we have such varied curriculum that you have like only maybe one class of 3D art. So you want to take that time after, create a portfolio, and then just got straight hired into EA. So you kind of like learn a lot of things here. and then you can take what you like and try to concentrate.
Yeah, I feel like the current structure of university education, I think this is very emblematic of where it's going, because it's much more promising and useful for the job market to have students build their own portfolios and try stuff on their own and try to see what they can do and specialize in that manner.
Yeah.
Instead of having everything be focused on classes and the curriculum itself.
Yeah.
And is that where do you feel the future of this program is, based on how you've seen it evolve since you left?
Yeah, so again, I had 3 concentrations when I left, but there's 7 now. So I think they're really I held up 6 and 7. So I think they're really focusing on finding what actually interests students and really pushing them towards those specific classes. And then once they have those interests, like you're saying, they can go out and like create their own portfolio, lead their own stuff. Again, like the VTuber thing was a passion project for a couple of students, and then they made it their own thing. And I think that's like the beauty of our program. You like something, you go for it, you know?
Yeah, I feel like students have a lot of say in this program in terms of what happens to the program. It's interesting because I come from the law faculty of law, and both in Ottawa and in Sherbrooke. I don't think any of my colleagues will disagree. It is a very rigid and conservative mindset. It is very hierarchical. And we are very much, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but we are very much dependent and reliant on our predecessors in terms of the judges, the professors, the experts, and the lawyers that came before us to teach us the ropes. And it takes often, decades for us to reach that level in order to bring something new to the field.
Right.
And it's very. And when we talk about changes, like here, the VTuber program, it's something that was set up based on what you told me, like so quickly.
Yeah.
In a matter of not even a few years, and in a lot of few years is it's not. Yeah.
I feel like it's very emblematic of the tech space, where you have to kind of keep up with technology, be tech savvy, and like things are always changing. I mean, you've seen the state of like, I don't know, just online, the tech is changing constantly.
Of course.
And so our program just keeps up with it, and that's why it's constantly evolving and changing. And I think that's pretty cool. Like, find yourself a program that adapts to that. I mean, law doesn't adapt that often. That's probably why it's more rigid.
No, it's more that there is a structure, and it has to follow coherently. Like you can't just be like, okay, let's throw all this away and let's do this other thing, right? Yeah. Because so many people depend on it, right? Like the entire society depends on it.
No, of course.
So it's a different field. I was more comparing the fact that it is a completely different mindset and way of going about things in your program, where it's very much bottom up driven in a lot of cases. Yeah, while law is very much top down. And I think like each of them have their own advantages and disadvantages. But I think if anything, it's very much emblematic and adapted to your program and to SIAT. The fact that a lot of it is driven, like when I see the individuals here, people who are in their 20s.
Yeah.
And they're the pioneers. They're the ones leading the charge, right? While myself, when I did presentations and conferences or panels on law, even at anime conventions, talking about like anime and law, talking about video games and law, the professors that I brought with me, like they're from the previous generation, like not that much older. They're in their 30s, but they're not in their 20s. That's for sure.
I guess if you just think about who knows social media best, it's always going to be the younger generations.
Yeah, like everyone has their strengths, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's even strengths like being older, like in knowing.
Yeah, there's wisdom. There's wisdom.
There's wisdom there, exactly. So, but I think it's really fun. Like if you're a prospective student, I think it's a really fun place to be like, I love technology. Where can I take it? And then one of the things is games.
Yeah, and as like to end the interview, maybe tell our audience where they can find you and how they can follow your future projects and where they can try out the game.
Oh yeah, of course. So Grooveyard is on Steam. Obviously, you can't really scan it QR code during a video.
I can put it in the description.
Sure.
The link.
Yeah, but basically Grooveyard's on Steam. There's a free demo that is this first world that I'm demoing today. And then Guavagoose Games is the publisher. Gonna make future projects. But I'm also in charge of social media. I haven't been posting lately, so don't worry if there's nothing there. But this personally takes you to a Discord server, which would update with future projects. which are very cool.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the interview.
Of course.
And I hope that you have a successful weekend and a very fun weekend here at Fan Expo Vancouver.
Thank you. I hope you have fun as well.
I'll try.